Hi, I'm Joe, the creator of MatrixEase. MatrixEase takes the approach that matrix data in current applications does not really show the data the way you think about it. You need to see the data the way you think about it. Our mission is to allow users to see and access the data the way they think about it, to provide a method for allowing us to visually consume very large matrix data sets and dynamically interact with them, to easily identify significant data relationships and detailed metrics on that data. When you think about this further, matrix data is really rows and columns of data. Each individual cell is a key and value pair that identifies what that data is. What we want to know is, what are the relationships and metrics of these pairs? Most people in business use spreadsheets to try and interpret this data. The problem with this approach has three components. We think about data differently than it's presented to us. We only have a vague idea of what we're looking at. And once a matrix contains more than a few hundred entries, it's hard to visually analyze. The solution is MatrixEase. It displays data the way you naturally think about it. It automatically categorizes and builds relationships and metrics of the data. It shows the data in a format that is visually consumable. MatrixEase reads your source matrix data and automatically categorizes it into human consumable groups. It also builds metrics on the source data and allows you to easily gain more insights into that data. The system displays the resulting data in a format that is easily understandable and consumable and actionable. The user then takes further actions on the data to further analyze that data set. Visit us at matrixease.com. MatrixEase is available as a shared public website, a desktop application for both Linux and Windows, and soon Macintosh, a Docker container, or a component that can be added to your existing web server. MatrixEase takes your source matrix data and automatically groups and categorizes that data into measures or dimensions, individual data types, and calculates detailed statistics and measures on the data. Each individual node represents a grouping applied by MatrixEase to allow you to visually consume very large data sets. Highlighting is automatically applied so you can quickly see how the percentage of a group is relative to other groups in the data set. When a filter is applied, this highlighting shows both the relative and percentage of the whole and the selected. You can always see detailed metrics and statistics on each individual column and grouping. The last step of the process is to take the information presented and apply further groupings and filters, and then further refine the data presented. You do this using the various tools supplied by MatrixEase. This is an overview of the functionality of MatrixEase. When you first load MatrixEase, either through the website or a desktop application, you're presented with a dashboard. The top section shows your currently created MatrixEase projects. The middle section shows information for creating a new project and the information you want for it. The bottom section is the source data for that new project. We support CSV files, Excel spreadsheets, and Google Sheets, and plan to add more formats in the future. I'll now load one of my existing projects. You're presented with a status that will show you where it is in the load process. Once the project is loaded, you'll get a header area that shows information about the project. It is context sensitive, so as you hover over columns, the column statistics and column measures will change. As you hover over nodes, the data statistics will change. Data statistics in total show the total rows and selected rows if you have a filter. Column statistics will show the column name, the type, measure or dimension, the data type, numeric, text, date, time, or URL, the number of empty values in that column, and the selectivity of that column. The column measures will show what grouping was applied, in this case 10 range buckets, the distinct values, and other metrics that are relevant to the data type for that column. The data statistics on a node show percentage of total, selected percentage of total if you have a filter, percent of selected, rows and selected rows if you have a filter. I'll now show how to apply filters with MatrixEase. The left action on the mouse selected on any node will apply that node to the current filter. I can see the filter is not applied yet as I have a filter pending change. I will now apply the filter. This shows the status of the filtering process. Once the filter is applied, it's visually represented in green and red blocks. The red shows the amount of the currently selected filter. The green shows the current amount of the total for that node. So in this case, since my minute plays are broken up into 10-minute blocks, I can see in the 20 to 30 minute block reserve players and starters play about the same amount of minutes. You can also apply filters By right-clicking any node, you can add only this cell to the filter, and this cell to the current filter, or this cell to the current filter. In this way you can create very complex filters. Here is an example of a semi-complex filter I applied. Basically I want to see players that are in the reserve role, and on the Chicago Bulls, or on the Detroit Pistons, and do not play between 20 and 30 minutes a game. I'll now demonstrate how the selection tool can really help you narrow in on your data. So I'm going to create a new project. When loading a new project, you'll always get a status of where it is in the processing of the MatrixEase data. Once the MatrixEase dataset is loaded, I'll then do a left action to select Shoreline Judo, and then a right action to OR Shoreline Judo, www.shorelinejudo, and I'll apply that filter. Now I can see how Shoreline Judo affects all the other data, but I really want to focus in on Shoreline Judo, so I'll use the selection tool to accomplish this. Just click the selections. The selections have a couple areas. The top area, I can basically filter the data by selected percent. So I can say greater than or equal to percentage, or less than or equal to a selected percent. I can also show the cell fills as different things, as just a percentage of total and selected, the default, and percent of selected. I can also change my left mouse button action to be overwrite the selection for the filter, or this selection to the filter, and the selection to the filter. I can also change my column order to be ascending or descending by selection, and hide some columns. I'll hide a few columns now to make the view easier to read. I've also set my view to be percentage of selection. I'll apply this now. Now I can really focus in on Shoreline Judo. Especially I might want to look at different status codes and how they rank. I'll now review some of the column actions. For each column there are 3 actions available: column settings, column stats, and column reports. I'll review column report first to review an overview, as that is the same for all column types. A column report basically gives you a breakdown of the buckets that it was made and the percentage of each bucket, the selected percentage of each bucket, the percentage of selected of each bucket, the rows and selected cells for that one bucket. Column settings and column stats are different for each type of column based on the data type: URL, text, numeric, date time. I'll review each one separately. For URL, the column settings can be bucketed by URL domain, URL scheme, text length, and parts of the path. There are also always metrics up at the top. I can also always override the default bucket that was applied by MatrixEase to something that I want to see. Column statistics for URL breaks down by text lengths, counts per URL, counts per schema, counts for first through fourth path parts, and most significant path terms. Numeric column settings, with statistics at top, can be broken down into 2 bucket types: ranges and max average outlier. Ranges takes the entire range of the data and breaks it into equally measured buckets that you specify, or the algorithm specifies. Max average outlier buckets takes the statistical model to look at the average and standard deviation and creates buckets in that fashion. Column stats for price data show min, max, average, range, standard deviation, and coefficient of variance for all the data in the column. It also shows you the same stats for all the data that was not null or empty in the column. Column settings can be bucketed by 1 to 4 letter prefixes, word patterns, most significant terms, and text length. Most significant terms is a powerful tool to determine for large text blocks what is the most significant term in that block and grouping it accordingly. Column stats for text shows you metrics up top, text length metrics, the prefix metrics, metrics for all terms, distinct considered terms, all considered terms, term counts, and then weighted terms, the most significant weighted terms, and calculated patterns. We'll get more into these details in a further video. For date time columns, the bucketing can be 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 1 decade, or 1 century buckets. Month of the year buckets, January through December. Day of week buckets, Saturday through Sunday. Hours of the day, minutes of the hour, or seconds of the minute. The column stats for date time show basically the metrics for the earliest, latest, average, the range, and the standard deviation. Next, I'll show the quick chart feature to quickly get insights into your data. I'll do a quick chart on the manufacturer and average price. Here I get a quick chart of my data, and I can see that Morgan, high price, that looks good. Ferrari, yes. Tesla, GMC, that looks odd. Jeep, and Chevrolet. Something is obviously off with my data set. If I go back here and quickly apply a new bucket to price, or I want a bucket by $100,000, quickly filter on price from 0 to 100,000, and do a quick chart report again on manufacturer, average price. I can now look at my data and see Morgan is still high, Ferrari is still high, Porsche, Tesla, Rover. I can see GMC, Jeep, and Chevrolet are now at more reasonable levels. I can also quickly make a report on this data, so I can narrow in on my data. I can do searches, sorts, etc. In this section, I'll review some of the cell actions you can take. In addition to adding filter criteria, you can also show the measures for this cell, show the rows for this cell as long as it's under 10,000 count, and show a dependency diagram for this cell. So let's show the measures for the Toyota cell. I can show price and odometer, and for this cell I want to get all the measures. So I can see the average price on a Toyota is 14,000, the average odometer is 90,000. I can find the min, max, range, standard deviation, and the rest of the metric values. Now I'll show a dependency diagram for a Toyota. So we have Toyota, and I can pick what dependencies I want to show. In this case, I want to show model. It shows me a dependency diagram of all the models for Toyota, and I can go over to get further details. I'll now show how you get rows for a particular cell. In this case, I'm picking description as it is using the most significant term, and horsepower. And I want to see the rows for this cell. This will return me a report where the most significant term in description was horsepower. If I slide over here and start looking at it, horsepower 235, horsepower 323, again, it seems to be vehicles where the major selling point is horsepower. I'll now give an example of the export features. From before, I filtered this data set only to show shoreline judo. Now I really want to focus in on these 404s. The first thing I want to do is I want to group my current selection, and I want to add the 404 selection in and apply that filter. I now have just the 404 for shoreline judo. I'll then do an export selected as CSV. Now save this to a local location. I can then load that data into a spreadsheet. And as you can see, it's only shoreline judo with 404s. I could also reload this into MatrixEase for further analysis. Please visit us at our documentation site where you can get more information about how to use MatrixEase. Component section is the major category that shows you detailed information on how to utilize MatrixEase. We also have a corporate site, a support site where you can enter tickets against the product, and a blog site with new information that will be coming out about MatrixEase. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoy using MatrixEase as much as I enjoyed building it.